So, Dr. Clayton, it was so funny because sometimes I think my phone is listening to everything I do. And I opened up Instagram and there's Jamie Lee Curtis sitting with Drew
Yes.
Barrymore. Did you see this clip? And she
Two
said,
seconds ago. Yeah.
Stop it. 2 seconds ago, you saw it? Okay,
Yeah.
so for my audience, so basically what happened is Jamie Lee Curtis is like, yeah, there, everyone knew about the three F's, fight, flight, freeze, but nobody knew about fawning. And I realized, I was fawning. And it was interesting because she talked about it being as she is a people pleaser. So I was like, how
Yes.
timely, because here we have the expert on fawning, the author of the amazing book Fawning. And I was like, oh, okay, so Instagram wants us to obviously talk about this. So, and apparently it did because you just saw it on your phone.
I know. I'm so grateful that we're all collectively having this conversation now, this conversation for a long time.
Yeah, I was thinking that. I was like, well, that's good. That means more people are aware of it, but we want them to understand it in the framework of from, your work and your research. And, this is something that you've obviously written this incredible book about.
Hmm.
And, the subtitles, Why the Need to Please Makes Us Lose Ourselves and How to Find Our Way Back. And what a beautiful invitation. Isn't that what we all want to do? We want to come home to ourselves. And there's many reasons we get disconnected from our authentic voice and our true selves. And we need to rescue those little girls inside that truly need that healing
Hmm.
and that like reclamation. And so I just want to thank you for the work you're doing just to start because it's just such an important message. So I think it's important now, like let's have you define fawning because in it, she's saying it's people pleasing and you're saying
Hmm.
oftentimes it's conflated with people pleasing or codependency. So give us the framings for this conversation.
Well, what I love about the lens and language of fawning is that it's framed as a trauma response, right? So an extension of fight, flight, and freeze. And the main takeaway for this is to know that it's not a conscious choice. And I think although fawning does include this aspect of people pleasing, that language for a long time has been sort of weaponized against us, right? Like, stop being such a people pleaser, as though we could just choose when the body was engaged in a survival response.
Yeah.
And that the body is hardwired when we are faced with threat to turn towards whichever response it thinks will get us through as unscathed as possible in a nanosecond, right? And so,
Yeah.
particularly when you're talking about relational trauma, which is also called complex trauma or childhood trauma, developmental trauma, this is where traumatic events occur over and over a period of time, right? It's like these pervasive cuts to your psyche. It's maybe not as obvious as acute trauma that we often think of, like a car crash or even a sexual assault. So, fawning is a very common response to ongoing relational trauma where we do appease or caretake in order to manage or lessen the relational harm.
Yeah. Survival on some level. Is that fair?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's
Yes, it's a
survival.
survival mechanism. And the body will always privilege safety and survival, which is the other reason why, when we sort of couch it in just people pleasing or codependency, um, we're missing the life saving nuance of what's actually happening. And that creates a lot of shame. And guess what keeps our trauma responses firmly entrenched? All that
Shame.
shame.
Yeah, of course. And then
Yeah,
we may not seek the help or feel
that's right.
safe to talk about it or do what you did, which is write a memoir, believing me, right? I mean, you
Mm,
were expressing your deep pain and then put it into this nonfiction to make it accessible. I find that
mhm.
when you have language, when you
Yeah,
have words and understanding, it gives you that permission to like have that compassion for yourself instead of the shame,
that's right.
right?
That's right. And it's why I tend to teach with lived experience.
Yes.
Because I think oftentimes, too, when you hear this theoretical framework, we can still second guess ourselves and be like, well, is that me or does that apply or my experience is different? There's a lot of self gaslighting that we do, especially when we
Yes.
have complex trauma. But when you really hear someone else's story, it's why I lead with my own and my
Yeah.
clients' experiences. That's when you can really feel in your body. You're like, I know what they're talking about. They're talking about me. In fact, that's the greatest feedback that I ever hear from readers or listeners of the audiobook. They're like, you've been reading my diary.
Oh,
you're
wow.
you're telling my story in such a specific way. And that's the way in. That's the permission giving.
Yeah, and so many of us need that. We need that. It's interesting because gaslighting has also become a very like more common term, like more people are aware of it. But I
Mm-hmm.
remember 10 years ago reading a definition and I was like, oh my goodness, that was my first relationship.
Wow.
That's why I dated a gaslighting sociopath. No wonder it took me years of therapy and it
Mm,
broke me and I had to rebuild myself. Like if I didn't have that definition,
yeah.
I wouldn't have understood because I think I did feel a lot of shame. And I also read in that article that a lot of intelligent and empathetic women tend to attract these kinds of men and they sort of know it intuitively or whatever. And so
Mm,
it creates a situation where you may feel like you can fix the person or you're going to I think even in the
that's right.
fawning like you can
Mm-hmm.
love them better, you're going to make them better, you're going to give them the
Yes.
love they didn't have and fix them, right? Can you talk about
Yes.
this? I know we're going to be talking about fawning specifically, but in the framework of what we're saying, when I read that it gave me
Yes.
like I was like almost like an exhale. I was like, oh,
Yeah, it
got
makes
it,
sense, right?
it made
So the
sense.
the other thing that I guess it's an extension of what we were already saying too is what I love about fawning is that it puts these behaviors back into context, which is what you're
Yes.
talking about. So even with the notion of codependency, we can sort of talk about it like, why do you care what people think about you? And just set a healthy boundary. Come on, Michelle, it's so simple, right? It's not so simple when you're living in the context of being disempowered. And if you think about a myriad of the systems of power, that we all live within. The body knows where it resides in the pecking order. Okay, so fight, flight, and freeze may not be available because the body knows it'll make it worse. Fighting
Mm.
back against someone that has that kind of power who weaponizes your own vulnerability against you, the body probably learned, even if you dipped your toe in, that's like stepping into a hot fire. So fawning becomes kind of the last house on the block. But again, it's not because we're giving up. It's because we're still choosing. The body is choosing the one opportunity to possibly stay safe, which is to stay engaged. I talk about it in the book that its connection is protection.
Mm.
And along those lines, connection is protection because our entire sense of safety lies outside of our own body. Okay, so it's this external focus. It's why we look at others and we think, you have the answers, you have the power. Do you like me? Are we okay? Are you mad at me? We're managing the states and moods of not just others, but sort of larger systems, as it were, in order to keep ourselves safe. But what happens then at the same time is that I don't have a sense of internal safety or agency in
Mm.
my own body. And what this creates over time is unfortunately a deep self-abandonment. So that speaks to why these dynamics are so common, that sort of beauty and the beast idea, right? It's like when someone has all the power and you have none, your power is found in helping them, loving them, being close to them, maintaining this vital relationship in order to stay safe.
Okay. I really want to break this down more because I think this is so good what you're saying. And
Mm,
in the book, you say that Dr. Judith Herman, a
mm-hmm,
Harvard psychiatry professor, made the
mm-hmm.
case that PTSD, which was often addressing acute stressors like military faced,
Yeah,
didn't capture the daily trauma women often face from sexual and domestic violence for something called complex PTSD, because you were talking about this in the realm of complex trauma, those little
that's right.
cuts over and over. And in 1988, she proposed that complex PTSD, complex trauma, be recognized. And you said to this day,
Yeah.
it is not. So I think this is an important piece, especially my audience is all women. So, how does this lack of acknowledgement impact treatment and how somebody can like do the work if it's not even fully recognized by the
Powers that
institution?
be.
Yeah, the
I know.
powers that be to the degree we care about these powers, but we do
Yeah,
because
we do because that's our therapist and that's
yeah,
insurance reimbursement and that's right. So
yeah.
Honestly, this remains one of the most heartbreaking things to me. And that's also why conversations like this are so important, because we cannot wait for other people to validate our experiences. We have to validate it ourselves. And yes, Judith Herman, just like every other form of medical research, it's all basically been done on men, right? And
Oh,
so
wow.
here was this body of work which was incredible, helping us define PTSD. I'm so grateful for it.
Of
But
course.
then Judith goes, wait a second, all my work with women in domestic violence, their symptoms are mirroring those of the vets, and we're not talking about it. And, she and Bessel van der Kolk and a host of other people over the last few decades have tried at different points in time with different language to get either, developmental trauma or, like I said, complex trauma, something in the DSM, and it has failed. Fortunately, I think the date was 2012 or 13. I might be misspeaking, but the World Health Organization has added complex PTSD as a diagnosis to their ICD-11. So what a lot of us are doing now is just using that as the sort of legitimizer, even though we don't have it in the DSM in the United States. The World Health Organization has said, yes, this is a thing. But that doesn't mean that proper training programs have been instituted. That doesn't mean that our continuing education has gotten up to speed. And I can't tell you how many times people reach out to me and they say, my therapist hasn't heard of complex trauma, or they haven't heard of the Fawning trauma response. So my work as a clinician, as, even a social media facing clinician, is to hopefully give the layperson this language so that we can at least arm ourselves with that, and then hopefully find people to work with that are trauma informed, that do understand. Because if people don't, unfortunately, they can do more harm than good in a therapeutic context if they're not using trauma informed theories and modalities.
Yeah, you wrote about that. And I thought that was really interesting and important because you said sort of like a relational, like just how you in your book didn't just have the case studies of clients, you spoke about your own. And it sounds like in therapy, you're willing to, let people know about what's happened to you, and you've allowed them to see other people's stories versus just talk therapy, right? But it's,
I believe when you're dealing with relational trauma, right?
yes,
I think a relational approach is the most helpful. And that doesn't mean I always self-disclose. It doesn't mean we're talking about my story all in the session, but it
yes,
means I'm very open to being a real person in the room. It's a real
yes.
relationship. I really care about the people that I work with. I really tell them what's coming up for me, not because I'm the expert and I have all the answers, but because I want to be transparent. That's a part of what creates the safety that we're needing in order to do this work. But also there's a feeling that I'm willing to go first, right? I'm willing to be vulnerable. I'm willing to say, this is real. Here's how I experienced it. I wonder if any of that resonates with you. And I can draw, again, if we think about a system of power. Hi, I'm Dr. Ingrid Clayton. Welcome to my office where I have it all figured out, right? People are so vulnerable walking in, and they're genuinely wanting help. But if you've been steeped in a fawn response for a long period of time, you're also probably feeling like, I need this person to like me in order to help me.
Makes
So
so much
look at the
sense.
bind that you're in. I
Yeah.
need to be vulnerable, but can I be that honest? Maybe they're going to judge me. Maybe they're not going to like me. And so there's this dance that ends up happening. And if clinicians aren't aware of that, they can mistake what looks like compliance and this, great smiling client for progress, when it's really just the fawn response all over again.
Yeah, and you keep using the word safety. So if there's not that
Yes.
sense of safety in that relationship and that dynamic, and there does feel like a hierarchical structure there, and they're the lesser, then that vulnerability is going to be there, or that shame, and they may not be
Yes.
as willing to share, even if that person could potentially help them,
That's right.
because they're going to be afraid that, like you said, that they'll be judged, and they're already judging themselves hard enough.
That's right. So I try to make a lot of room for those real conversations to enter. And I find the best way to do that is by being a real person myself.
Yeah. And is that
Yeah.
why you showed up on social media? Because that takes courage to do that too.
Well, I think that's a piece of it for sure. I showed up on social media like a lot of us because it's the only way you can market. You have to have a platform to have a
That's true
voice to
too.
any degree.
Yeah.
And I was writing this memoir that I thought I'd like to have published. But I'll tell you, the reason I stayed wasn't for any of those things. The reason I stayed is because as a lifelong fawner myself, who has shape shifted and become what the environment needs me to be in order to feel safe. In some ways, going on social media as a clinical psychologist, as someone with a private practice, as an author, but also really, truly as a survivor of childhood trauma, like I was leading with that experience more than my credentials.
Yes.
It was one of the first places where I allowed all of the parts of me to be in one place at the same time.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
So even in this very curated, social media world, I was not curating myself. I was irreverent. I was silly. I was sing-songy. I was a performer before I was a clinician, right? So all of the parts of me got to hang together, and it felt so good to my nervous system. And then I got so much feedback that people really appreciated that aspect of it. So it became another extension of my own healing.
Yeah. No, you do a beautiful job with your page. And there, when you say it's like was freeing, it also becomes, like you said, that permission and invitation to someone else. Like she's done the
Yes.
work, like there's hope. I think too, knowing that there's hope is so
Yes.
huge for anyone on a healing
Mm,
journey.
mm,
What if somebody's confused, like with sort of, because there is people pleasing or like whatever, but
mm-hmm.
you're talking about complex trauma, like you said, those little cuts over years compiling, compounding. So what if someone's wondering, because like even in the promotional thing for the book, it says, do
Mm-hmm.
you apologize to people who have hurt you, ignore their bad behavior, befriend your bullies, obsess about saying the right thing, make
Mm-hmm.
yourself into someone you're not while seeking approval that may never come. So how does somebody really identify where it's just like, maybe they're socially uncomfortable. And so they just sort of do what they need to do to make the interaction fine versus something more pervasive or like just as their preferred trauma response that they may not even have be aware of. Because even in the book you said, oftentimes fawners don't even know they're doing it. They don't even have the awareness because
Yes.
it's just a part of how they show up now. It's been
Yes.
habitualized, right?
Yeah. So I think identifying with those symptoms, those questions is really one way in. But
Yes.
I would be remiss not to also mention that these are hardwired responses, unconscious responses, and many of us have been conditioned to fawn. So we really
Yes.
come by it honestly. You swap out a lot of the language or the synonyms for fawning, the descriptors for fawning, and it looks like you're talking about being feminine, pleasing and
Totally.
caretaking. Okay, so a lot of us as little girls, it's like give your uncle a kiss. We're being told time and time again, abandon what you really need and how you really feel and serve. And so that's another piece of it. But secondly, I would say when you ask yourself these questions, am I conflict avoidant? Am I able to assert myself or have an opinion? Think about what it feels like when you don't. And for
Mm.
most people, particularly in a chronic fawn response, there's going to be a sense of terror that makes feel so high. It feels like life or death. And to me, that's the greatest indicator that
Mhm.
we're talking about a trauma response.
Yeah, it feels like survival. It's not just like I'm a little uncomfortable. It's
It feels like survival in the body. That's right. The stakes feel so high, which is why that mismatch of telling people just the past is in the past, just let it go, it's no big deal. That is not validating the experience that they have in their body. Because what we know about trauma is that it's not in the past at all. The body is stuck in time. It feels like, no, 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 no. It's happening now. It's happening now. And again, you can see this opportunity for great shame then, because it
Yes.
sounds so simple. It
Get over it
sounds so
already. What's
obvious.
the big deal? Yeah.
But what I
Wow.
felt in my body for a long time is that these things were impossible. And they were. They were.
Of course. That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
There's an expression that a lot of, I think it's like part of the teen language now. It's not that deep. That's what they say to each other.
Ooh. Oh,
Not,
that's interesting.
yeah, but yeah, no, actually, oftentimes it is that deep.
Right.
But just the
Right.
fact that even culturally, like, or even within a generation of like what's like language and how we relate,
Yes.
I don't hear adults saying that, but I've heard the teens say that. Like, it's just the thing they say now.
Well, we probably have different language for it. I speak about toxic positivity in the book. There's all kinds of ways that we encourage people to just let it go, just choose happiness, right? There's
Right.
lots of different ways that we can invalidate people. And I also don't want to minimize that sometimes it isn't that deep. But what I do want to say is only the individual can know. It cannot be
Yes.
this outside prescription. Even when I sit with my clients, this idea, the thing that I've learned over time in these decades of working in the field, what I've gleaned from all of this time sitting with other human beings is that the less I think I know about what they're experiencing or what the answers are, quote unquote, for them, the better we both are. Because
Mm,
I'm always surprised at what's really happening or what really needed to happen. That there's this organic, very personal, unique process that needs to unfold. And I, as a therapist, am not the one who decides what that looks like or the timing of it. But if
right.
I can create the conditions, if I can help to create the conditions and bring about, these trauma informed modalities, they can be the catalyst for that thing. But mostly I need to get out of the way.
Interesting. Yeah, you're
Yeah,
the safety zone. You're creating the safe space for the deep work to
that's
occur,
right.
however long it
Hopefully.
takes.
That's
However
right.
long it takes. Because you even
Yeah.
mentioned in the book, some of the clients had worked with like a year and some was like 16 plus years.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
we're
And
all on
I'm
our own
still in
journey.
personal therapy. I've written the book on fawning, and guess what I'm talking about in my personal therapy? Fawning, because I will always have a body.
Of
I will
course.
always live in a
Oh,
context of other
yes.
people. So I also
Yes.
want to make it clear this is not a binary healed or unhealed, fixed or broken. We are thankfully letting that go. And it's less of a sexy marketing message, I have to say, because those like 10 steps to freedom,
Yeah,
that's much more compelling. But I'll tell you,
totally.
I don't know about you, but I have done all the things. And I would not be talking about this framework and this approach if it wasn't the most helpful. And not just for me, but for my clients as well. And it really involves knowing that we are going to exist in this human condition forever. And none of us are meant to live in a trauma response 24/7.
Right.
So there's a lot of room in between there. There's a lot of flexibility in between there. And it's an ongoing process.
Absolutely. And that's sort of the beauty of it too. You just go, oh my gosh, how did I not see that pattern? Oh wow, I'm
Mm.
always like hyper vigilant in these situations, or like I didn't even realize. And some of it for me personally has been these kinds of interviews with,
Wow.
yeah, with other psychologists or people who deal with the nervous system. And I'm like, oh
Yes.
wow, I wore a back brace for 6 years for scoliosis, and I could literally not take a full breath for 6 years, 23 hours out of the day. You talked
Mm.
about, I think it was Sadie who held her breath because,
Yes.
but for me, it was not a person, it was a physical bracing
Device. Yeah.
device that
Mm.
literally cut me off from what you need, which is your breath and that connects you to your body. So yeah, these kinds of conversations, that's why I do the show, because maybe someone sees themselves. And most people probably didn't wear the
Mm.
back brace, but they can relate to other aspects or whatever. But yeah, it's
Mm.
interesting. And I'm like, oh, that's why I do that. And it's such a gift
Wow.
when you can unlock. It's like, right, a little
Yes.
bit of like an unlocking here and here. And then it's like, just becomes a part of the bigger picture. And you never maybe fully get there, but you're more at peace.
That's
You
right.
can set healthier boundaries. You can advocate for yourself. You can choose
Mm.
to do things a different way. I mean, I'll be 55. And I just said to my husband the other day, I'm like, yeah, this situation just came up and I did something I never would have been able to do like a year
Oh,
ago.
that's so exciting. I
Right?
love that. At any age, it's such a abundant yes in my body. I get so
Right?
excited.
That's
Yes,
yes.
yes.
Okay, so let's go back to the fawning though too, because this is where I'm a little bit so many the stories that you shared, including your own. So there were
Mm-hmm.
stories of physical, sexual abuse. There were so, and you said acute trauma versus like this complex, like ongoing. So if
Yeah.
somebody's like, well, I so like I didn't have that, but I had the brace, and I tended to I, go into a survive like a sense of hypervigilance. I think because it was wanting to be accepted because wearing the braces going into middle school starting like tend to
Yes.
so how do you know if
Mm.
you're especially if you're not seeing if your default pattern is fawning or just another level or does it even matter? Like, I mean, I just am trying to unpack this a little bit more. And does it need to be ongoing? You know what I'm saying? Like, and does it need to have happened when you were younger? Does this happen when you're older? Like, is it an older conditioning pattern, like trauma response?
These are all great questions.
I
To
know, I'm
some
sorry, it was a
degree,
lot. Yeah, it's a
no, it's
lot.
okay. To some degree, I want to pull back and just speak to that question of does it really matter? And my honest answer is no. But I want to point to these questions that you're asking.
Yeah.
To me, again, are the indicators that there's a there. That most of my clients come in and they go, well, I didn't really have real trauma. And I almost called my own memoir, Maybe It Wasn't That Bad.
Oh, wow. Instead of believing me,
Yes, it wasn't until the very end of that writing process 5 years
I
later
just
that,
got goosebumps.
yes, that I could make that shift and go, wait a second, it was that bad because now
Wow.
I know it. But what's true for most of us is that we're holding what I call this trauma measuring stick. And you can
Mm.
always look to someone else's experience and go, well, they had it so much worse. So
Yes.
mine must not really count. But here's an important thing to know about trauma. It's not about the event at all. It's about how the event overwhelmed our nervous system. That's the wound. It's what happens in the body. And so this is important because you can take several people. We see this in families all the time.
Yep.
They grew up in the same home.
Yep.
Someone's like, well, but I had the same parents. I lived in the same church community. I did this, that, and the other. And they're walking away totally unscathed, completely
Yes.
solid sense of self. Someone else growing up in that same home, similar conditions, maybe slightly different for whatever reason, they are deeply traumatized. And that's what we need to point to is not the event itself. Like, does this give me permission? What gives us permission is I identify with the symptoms. I know what you're talking about. You're speaking to my experience. To me, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
That's really all that matters. And some people have talked about trauma as these big T's and little T's. And even though
Yep.
I use the word little with you, every
Yes.
time that we've said it again, I go, oh, I kind of bristle because it's another measuring stick. And
Yes.
for a long time, I thought, well, my experience didn't count because I was being groomed by my stepfather. I couldn't use that language for a long time, but he never really overtly sexually abused me. And so I felt like, you know, I talk about this story about my brother when we were growing up, that he told these lies to the teachers that our parents had him sleep outside at night in the empty hot tub with just the cover of the hot tub as a blanket. And I'll tell you, even as a kid, when I heard that he told that story, this makes me emotional too. I thought that was so brilliant that he did that because he concocted a story that matched externally what he was feeling internally. And I hear this from trauma survivors all the time. They say, I wish I had bruises. I wish I had this kind of a story, because we want something to give us permission. We want it to be obvious. So what I really want people to know, if you identify with anything in this conversation, you belong here. Your experience matters. And it's why one of the stories that I started with in the book, in addition to my own, was my client Anthony, because he's one of the people that for so long was like, Ingrid, great family, great experience. There's nothing to see here. But what we came to see was a chronic invalidation, this whittling away day in, day out of this is who you need to be in this family and to be in the world. They were his marching orders, and he believed it. And so there was this split between authentic self and the self that he needed to be to belong, which is partly what comes up for me when I hear about this brace. Belonging is vital to survival, particularly as children.
Yeah.
We can't take care of ourselves. We can't be ourselves at any cost. We live in context. And so for Anthony to come around to see and be able to own, this did happen to me. And even though his story probably to this day still registers as like a, point oh something on the Richter scale, what that led to in terms of how he was living his life so disconnected from his true self, it's profound.
Yes.
It's profound. So I hope that speaks to, no one can give you permission but you. It's also why, listen, I sat on a million therapist couches as a client. I've been to multiple 12-step groups over the years. I've done all the workshops. I've read the books. None of those people turned to me and said, Ingrid, you have complex trauma. That's what this is. You're engaged in a chronic fawn response. I'm the one who had to do it. And I could only do it through writing my own story, where eventually I had enough distance from it that I could look back and go, that's what this is. That's what this is. And yet I could still hardly believe it.
Yeah.
That's such a big part of healing.
Yes.
And it makes sense because what we've been talking about is internal safety.
Yes.
Pivoting from this external validation. Do you say that I have trauma? Do you say that my story matters? To building our sense of self from the ground up, which often means I know what happened. I know how it felt. I know how it still feels today. It matters. I matter. Buckle up, right? Like I'm in charge. I'm in the driver's seat.
Yeah. Wow. This is so good. And thank you for sharing all that. And it's interesting about the writing too, because I was like, oh, the brace, that was nothing.
Oh,
I didn't even bother me. Like, it was nothing. Oh my God. And it was a paper I wrote I think for an English class in college. And we had to unpack something we went through. And as I wrote, I'm like, oh my God, this actually really was so much harder. And yes, my audience has heard me mention it because it comes up. It just comes up because for me it was, and it created a level of hypervigilance where like, I realized like in so many situations, like I still am not fully like settled in, like, or like in a yoga class where you have to take a deep breath. I'm like, there's like my body will go, oh, thank you. It's like, yes, you understand. So it's just interesting. It's just, and just to have that separation. And so hopefully someone who hears this conversation, because it's our stories, then go, okay, wait, I can maybe see pieces of myself, and then it becomes permission and invitation. One of the biggest reasons I started this show is I don't want any woman reflecting on her life feeling like she did live it for everyone else. She never really got to live that authentic version of herself, where, to use your word, you felt free. Like when you're on Instagram and using different parts of yourself, you said you were in, like, was it theater that you did, or what did you?
I was a singer-songwriter before. Yeah.
Oh, how beautiful. Oh my God. That's so amazing. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So like, talk about truth. Like, I feel like singing, I think the reason we get goosebumps and tear up is that like it connects us to something so like soulful and true. Right?
Yes.
So
but the thing is that I even love about that arc of my experience is that for a long time, even growing up, so my stepdad was a singer-songwriter.
Oh, he was.
He used that aspect of me as the part of the grooming process. So there's one layer there. But also in the song, it was always the only place that I felt safe enough to be big and to have a voice, that I could do it in the safety of a song. I could not do it in the rest of my life. And so now I feel like I'm always going to be a singer. I'll, sing around the house and sing to my son, but I can have a voice in the rest of my life. It does not have to be so contained in that 3 minutes and 24 seconds.
Wow. Okay, this is so good. There's like so many ways I could take this. Okay, so to the degree we want these women really reclaiming that, getting connected
Mm,
to their voice, getting
mm.
connected to their truth, standing in that power. Just give us some context about like how might this show up? Because you even said fawning can be there's the positive and negative. I mean, it's
Yeah.
so from a professional lens, like how
Hmm.
might it either serve or work against us? Just to give somebody some context around like maybe how they're showing up at work or not pursuing something full on, or maybe it's helping them in some way.
Yeah, I think, well, there's a lot of different aspects of fawning. It can look so different depending on the person, their personality, and the
Yeah,
context. But what it just evoked for me in that question is for the person who doesn't want to speak up because it feels like there's going to be a target on their back. And so they let other people take the credit and they're the helpers and they stay too late because they don't want someone mad at them. So there's a ton of overworking, but with not a lot of titles and raises and what's the word I'm looking for? Just the validation,
recognition. Yeah,
recognition,
yeah,
right? And maybe you're at that ceiling and you feel like I want the recognition, but you're still waiting for someone else to give it. I think
mm,
there's this thing where we have to, part of a trauma response, if you're engaged in it all the time, we are now perpetuating our own trauma reenactment. It's like our trauma response is 10 or 12 steps ahead all the time, going, I will not let that happen again. And so here's a bit of the rub is that in order for us to find more freedom, we have to confront that space and say, I'm asking my only sense of protection to step back. And you
oh
know what it's
wow,
going to feel like? It's going to
terror.
feel like terror.
Yeah.
So that's also why this work is slow. That's why we build these other support systems and foundational feelings of internal safety before we run for some finish line. Like, I'm just going to tell him how I really feel, because you're going to just end up feeling re traumatized and then the body's really going to dig in. But there
Mm,
tends to be this, we have to tolerate more discomfort. And in this process, the beautiful thing that can start to happen is the body learns discernment. Is this danger? Oh man, I've always felt like it was danger. Or is it discomfort?
oh,
Can I stretch that comfort zone really and sort of extend myself a little bit more? And so it's, again, deeply personal. It can't be prescriptive. It
of
has to feel
course.
like it's coming from inside of you and that you feel like this is, you're building this safety and this sense of being able to try. But when we do it from that ground up place, what tends to happen is we do get more real time feedback. This work is experiential, right? You can see how it's not theoretical. We
Right.
have to step into basically the lion in the cage and go, okay, I have more tools. Let me try them on and see how this feels. And we start to find that, wow, I wasn't annihilated in that exchange, or I was recognized here, and it doesn't feel like people are coming for me. It doesn't feel like it's going to it doesn't feel like life or death. It feels good. It feels empowering. Oh, I've never really felt that before. And as we start to feel those things more and more, we create a little more safety and it can start to grow from there. So this is just one example. I know I'm kind of keeping it general, but it's one
No,
example
I
of,
get why you are though.
yeah, because I don't want people, if I tell someone what to do, I'm just another externally focused, validator who has the authority. And
Yeah.
what I really want people to do is know that they are the authority in their own life.
Yeah.
So it's that careful balance of trying to offer tools and shared experience. And there's lots of stuff I've mentioned about modalities and doing inner child work and all kinds of things, journaling that can be helpful. But at the end of the day, we each have to be in the driver's seat of our own lives.
Yeah, I want to get to that in just a moment because I know that doing the work, and you even reference this in the book, it can almost be more traumatic, like feel more terrifying than what you've come through, right?
Yes.
So actually, okay, so I do want to get there in just a moment, but let's talk a little first actually about the personal relationships. Again, it'll be generalized and not prescriptive, but you even talked about in the book, you said, you experienced the trauma growing up with your stepdad, and then, you dialed into your academics, right? You got your PhD
Right.
in clinical psychology. You said you went to yoga, you did all the things, you talked about it, you did all the 12 steps, you did all the
Yeah.
therapy.
I'm going to overcome it. I'm going to rise above. I'm going to do all the things you told me to do.
Yeah. And you said, well into my 30s, I joked I must be wearing a sandwich board that read, users and abusers apply here. It's like I was trying to break a spell by drinking the same poison, hoping I'd eventually build up the necessary antibodies.
Yeah.
I think that's really relatable. So, like, you also mentioned is that saying like water rises to its own level. So
Mm-hmm.
were you in these patterns where it was so familiar? Like how does somebody break
Yes.
free? Because I think that can be a pattern. Like I said, I dated my first relationship was with this gaslighting sociopath. It was
Mm-hmm.
emotionally abusive. It brought me into the world of therapy and spirituality and all of it. So
Mm-hmm.
some good came out of it,
Yeah.
but it was painful AF. Like I don't swear on my show, but
Yes.
God, was that painful?
Yes.
And almost broke me. Doing the work
Yeah.
was harder than the freaking relationship, but I got to
Yes.
reclaim myself and I did not ever fall in that pattern again.
Mm. So
But
here's
I
one
could see how
thing.
you could, but it was so
Yes.
bad the first time. Like it wasn't like, do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I
Like
do.
I
I
got
do.
smacked in the head enough that I was like, oh yeah, that's not happening again. Like I will not survive.
I think that, first of all, for people with childhood trauma, where your only sense of love and connection was coupled with abuse and neglect, there is a deep confusion sewn into your
I
system.
see. Okay. Yes.
And so that is one piece of this puzzle, that the body's always trying to solve for that. Believing, okay, because a child cannot wholly see their caregivers as deficient. We need them to survive.
Of course.
So there's this instantaneous feeling of, well, it must be me. I
Of
must
course.
be the deficient one. I need you. Maybe I can see some of your flaws, but on the whole, I need you so bad that I'm going to make it my fault. No one chooses this. It just happens. And so if that's a piece of the layer, a piece of the driver, that's one thing. But then let me see. You have said so many great things that it conjured 10 different ways that I could go. So I'm going to see if I can break it all down and capture it. So then, hold on. Give me just a second because I'm going to try to capture this thread. So there's the foundational piece, but then you were talking about the relationship. There was something there. I really want to capture it. Can you speak a little bit just to that piece of it, and I think it'll bring
My
it back up for
experience or
me.
what you
Yeah.
wrote.
Well, maybe either.
So you were basically saying that you kept going back to the same poison to get the necessary to build up the necessary antibodies. And I
Yes.
was saying like for me I don't know what attracted me to this guy. I but it was so painful that once
Yes.
I did the work, I broke whatever attraction that would have been. And also, all right, I won't jump to the next thing, but I will. I think this is helpful, especially for some of the younger women that might be listening. I want to address chemistry too, because I had crazy chemistry with this person, and chemistry isn't always
Yes.
helpful. So I know it's too layered. Where
So the other thing, so first there's that layer of it must be my fault. So that's now what I'm carrying into subsequent relationships. I sort of see that you have your own stuff going on and you're unavailable, or, you know, whatever that combination of issues is that's happening. But I really believe it's not, again, theoretical. My body learned as a very little girl, it's my problem. I have to fix it. It's a feedback loop. Again, I need you to be okay. And then and only then can I really start to focus on my own needs. Okay. But what simultaneously is happening, and we don't see it, is that we're focusing on their unavailability. You're not available. You're not showing up. You have these problems that you need to fix. We are so tuned in, so hyper vigilant, that we don't see that we are also unavailable. So this is that place where water seeks its own level. We don't feel unavailable because we're so available to you. We're so available to the other person, but we are not available to ourselves.
That makes so much sense.
Because we're not even there.
And I did continue to date emotionally unavailable people because I wasn't there either and ready until I met my husband 25 years ago.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. That's really interesting. Yes. So the pattern in some way did, but it just wasn't, it wasn't into that sense
that
of
intensity.
Yeah. It wasn't that intensity and that, yeah, that toxicity.
Right. So,
yeah.
So for me, in some ways too, it always looked a little bit different. It's
Yes.
because it felt like, oh, every new person, it felt like this is hopeful and this isn't the
Of
same
course.
pattern.
And isn't that beautiful? It could feel hopeful because
It could.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
But
That it wasn't.
it always fell into a different way of they're not available. What do I need to do to help them so that
How
my
do I
needs
fix
can be
me?
met?
Yeah.
Right, through the relationship.
Interesting.
So it's tricky. And again, if it is fueled by a trauma response or trauma reenactment, none of that is conscious. It just feels like this is all I know. This is the way. It's like literally a fish in water. And you're sort of going like, what water? To someone on the outside, they can see this is so dysfunctional, right? You're like swimming in a cesspool, and it's like, but I've only known a cesspool.
Right.
And I've gotten this far, and I'm working so hard. And so that's the other thing that you sort of brought up when I say I did all these things and this achievement. We're working so hard to try to overcome. But again, it's external validation focused. It's if I can get married, if I have a house, if I have a degree, if I have a career, then that's going to fix it. And unfortunately, all it does is creates an even bigger fortress. And talk about a measuring stick. We go, well, what do I have to complain about? We don't know that we've literally now sort of buried ourselves under these degrees and betterment and yoga and all this stuff. And of course, all of that has its place. And there's so much goodness even for me that I gained from pursuing all of those things. But I was doing it with this urgency, this sense that I was not okay and that those things were going to be the salve.
Yeah.
Which again, even in that, you can see there's no self there. It's my self is somewhere out there, and I'm going to catch up to her, or I'm going to find her, and it's never quite in here. And so starting in here, to go back to this other point, feels like terror. It feels really hard. It feels confusing. There's so much grief there. There's so much unprocessed and metabolized anger and rage, and it does not feel good, which is the other reason I get so upset about the toxic positivity, or when we talk about like, you go girl, like, oh my gosh, this is hard. And I cannot say it enough. It's the most healing and helpful thing I've ever done. And the same for my clients. It's the thing that finally released us. I reference this in the book because I think it's such a powerful way of talking about this. Resma Menakem, In My Grandmother's Hands, he's a somatic therapist and writes about racialized trauma in the United States. He talks about the difference between clean pain and dirty pain, okay? Dirty pain is what we know. It's me recycling all that same stuff and not really understanding it relationship after relationship. Clean pain is this feels like it's a harder path. It's sharper. It's going to bring up more, but it's in service of finally moving through. You're going to feel pain either way. So even just knowing that truth, there's no overriding it. There's no finish line. There's no, well, when I get to this place in my life, ... Guess what you're going to be at that place in your life? The same version of you that you were way back when.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's huge.
I hope that answers the question. We went down a few different.
No, it's good. And I've been doing more stacked because it's like there's so many layers to it. I mean,
Yes.
this is not like, so you do talk about unfawning
Yes.
as a journey of self-reclamation. And I love the word reclamation, self-reclamation. So a journey of finding our voices, stepping into our authority, and finally living life on more of our own terms. That's literally the invitation of this show. There's no quick fixes. Nobody's going to just hear this interview and be like, oh my God, great, fawning. I think that applies to me. That's my trauma response. Good. I'm good.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So just given it, like if you were literally like for some reason the imagery I'm seeing is like, because also the invitation is to invite women off the sidelines into her starring role. So imagine like you putting your hand out to a woman and you're inviting her center stage and you want her to belt out that I don't know, her voice that like reconnects her. Like, what is that initial reclamation? Where can she begin?
Yes. Oh, it's such a juicy question. So here's where I would begin.
Yes.
It has to begin with the body, not with our intellect of my opinions and what I think I know and what I think is going to sound good.
Yeah.
We start with the body. And this is what I've heard in every trauma training I've ever been to. We don't say, what do you think about that? We say, what are you noticing now? What are you experiencing now? So if she were to come up on stage with me, I would allow us to get real quiet. Maybe I'd feel both of our feet on the ground and see if she wanted me to hold her hand so she didn't feel alone. I'd invite the audience to do the same. Let's get real relational. We're all in this together.
Yeah.
I would remind us that the senses are the language of the nervous system. So maybe we would all just take a look around the room that we were in and find that just by looking, you're actually dropping into it a little bit more. That's safety. You might take a spontaneous deep breath. That signals safety. It's not a, I'm going to take a deep breath. It's a spontaneous, deeper breath that lets us know, wow, I'm here and you're here. And then from that quiet place, I would get curious. What are you experiencing now? And here's the beautiful thing. This makes me emotional. Whatever the answer is right. Because the answer might be, I just feel nervous. And I go, oh, of course, this would make anyone nervous. What's it like to be with yourself, to really notice that you're nervous? And we get to linger there. Maybe they say, I feel nothing. I don't even know if I exist right now. I might be dissociated. And I go, oh, of course, that protector dissociation coming in to save the day. Can we allow that just to be here exactly as it is? This is what it looks like to build a different relationship to ourselves, where we are meeting ourselves exactly where we are, not as a problem to fix. And can you imagine that whole audience watching someone be so present to themselves, and you're practicing it too? This collective feeling that there's no place to get to. Can we just be here and be safe in this moment? This is what lets the body know, not theoretically, but experientially, it's okay to be me. And the more that I feel that, and then I leave that conference room and I go out into the world, I'm now bringing a piece of that with me. And the body will not forget it. And the next time it feels possible where you go, I can't really express my opinion, I can't be who I am, the body will go, maybe this is a place where you might practice doing it a little differently, and you'll get a little more experience and a little more experience, right? So there's also, I don't want to oversimplify things, because if we're talking about long-standing complex trauma, there's likely some reprocessing that you need to do. If you're really feeling stuck, I hope people will seek the help that they deserve. But if we're talking about that initial invitation, I think that's what came to mind.
So, so beautiful. It made me emotional. I was just like, the imagery is so beautiful. If somebody's looking for help and getting the right kind of help,
Mm-hmm.
is there, obviously I'm going to direct them to follow you, but like, where do they find that practitioner that can do this work in a way that honors the fawning trauma response?
If they're looking for a therapist or coach, I think you use this language and you call someone in and you say, hey, I've heard about fawning, I've heard about complex trauma, these are things I want to work with. Do you work in this area, and how do you work in this area? They should have an answer for that. If
Okay,
they
yeah.
don't, that's not your person.
It's not
There are
your
so
person.
many different modalities. I only reference the ones that I have personal or professional experience with in the book, but there are three widely known and somewhat accessible modalities, including internal family systems, or IFS,
Yep.
somatic experiencing, or SE, and EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. So these are three modalities, but don't also limit yourself to that. I also really speak to, in that unfawning part of the book, notice what you're drawn to, right? Because here's the other truth. Here I am, this trauma therapist who's done all of these modalities, and yes, they have been helpful. And my body needed to write a memoir.
Yes.
That really was a big piece of my own reprocessing. That was my trauma healing. And so I don't have all the answers, but this is a good place to start by asking these questions. Are you trauma trained? What modalities do you use? Here's what I'm experiencing. How do you work with that? And the other thing I'll say is this: if you start working with someone, give it a little bit of time, because it takes a little bit of time. But if you really feel like it's not working and nothing's happening, say it. And the boy, this is hard for fawners. We don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but what are we here for, right? We're here for ourselves. And so say, I don't feel like this is working, or that didn't feel good to me. We have to bring ourselves to the therapeutic process. And if you've done that for a little while and you still feel like, oh, nothing is happening here, please don't stay. Don't stay in therapy just because it looks like, well, I'm going to therapy. If you don't really feel like it's helping, and I say this knowing how hard it is to find the first person to begin with, but I really hope you will move on and try something else.
Yeah, this is all such great advice. I could have taken this conversation so many directions, but I always trust like what came through. And I
Mm.
love everything you shared. It's been so beautiful and rich. And also, I'm just so grateful to you for the work that you're doing out in the
Oh.
world. I'm going to link your book Fawning, but if people want to find you on social, they want to connect, like they want to follow your work at the book, like where should I direct them?
My website has links to all the things. It's ingridclayton.com. And I think on all social media, I'm at Ingrid Clayton, PhD. That's on Substack. That's on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. So yes, please come join the community and the comment section and the unfawning revolution, as some people say.
I love that. No, it is a
Yeah.
revolution. Hey, like we
Yeah.
said, we started the interview. It was Jamie Lee Curtis with Drew Barrymore. It's
I
getting out there.
know.
So
It's getting out
it's
there.
getting out there, and mostly
Yes.
because of the work that you're doing. And I'm so grateful to you. Love this conversation, ladies. As you know, on the podcast player on your phone, all the links will be referenced. You'll be able to follow Dr. Clayton easily and find her book and go follow her and share this interview with every woman you know, because this is
Mm.
how we are a part of the revolution, and we make the change and we reclaim our authentic selves and our voices and help one another heal. And you're doing
Mhm.
such an incredible job in the world. I'm so grateful to you. And this has been such a pleasure. So thank you for coming on today.
I'm so grateful to be here. I loved this conversation. Thanks for having it.
Thank you.